When we got home from school, we hopped on our ponies and rode off into that nice, happy world. We lived just under the dimes. That's why we used to ride our ponies. Andrew Parker, who was once the quiet, dignified character in Camilla's complicated, royal love story, just changed the script in the cruelest way possible. He did more than talk. He hit Camilla, who was now queen, looked shocked, and was holding back tears as Andrew hit her with a cold, planned blow that no one saw coming. He didn't say anything for decades until now. But what did he say that made the house panic and made Camilla look bad in front of everyone? Hold on tight, because we're about to dive into the chaos that shook the crown. The time when Andrew stole the show. It began like any other evening in a royal palace, a fancy gala with a silky air of status and subtle stress. The event took place at London's historic Guildhall and included typical royal Polish political heavyweights, foreign dignitaries, and shimmering gowns. At the center of it all was Camilla Parker, who looked stunning in navy and pearls, and smiled like she was used to being in the spotlight. The cams didn't pick up on the weak current moving below the surface, at least not right away. There, sitting closer than expected at the head table, was the man that no one thought would be in the news that night. Andy Parker BS, the guy who used to be in Camilla's life and is now on her stage. At first look, it didn't seem dangerous. There were polite nods, a few short clinks of champagne glasses, and even a few half-hearted smiles. But those who were paying attention could feel the tension. Andrew's silence got louder as more praise was given to Camilla for her kindness, hard work, and claimed sacrifices, in a way that only people sitting close by could feel. The light around him faded. His jaw was set, and his eyes were bright. It wasn't about the event anymore. There was a start of something deeper moving. Then it took place. Andrew stood up without a signal or any kind of ceremony. He didn't have plans to talk. Not one person told him what to do. He didn't need to. The room became quiet. The cameras turned. He held a wineglass in his hand and spoke in a cool, but much more dangerous way. Truth with a note of moderation. He started by writing a few sad lines about the Camilla he knew from the past. Her beauty, her determination, and the way she opened up in a way that felt safe and natural. Even Camilla gave a small nod, probably because she thought it was a nice toast. It didn't though. Andrew's tone changed slowly at first, then quickly became sharper. He talked about sacrifices that weren't made by royalty but by those who had to live quietly next to it. He talked about how history books hid facts to protect someone else's image, and how people wore masks for so long that they forgot who they were before the crown. The blow then came. The next thing he said did more than just shake the room, it broke it up. Wide eyes and gasps could be heard. Camilla's face went blank, and her fingers clenched around her paper like they were ready to hit something hard. There was more to it than what Andrew said. It was the honesty, the time, and the clear hint of betrayal. Whatever plans had been made for that night fell apart when he told them. But to really understand what happened that night, we need to look back at a marriage that wasn't what it seemed to be. A royal wedding with holes in it. In 1973, when Camilla Shand married Andrew Parker BS, everyone thought they were seeing a fairy tale come true. He was a handsome military officer from a well-known noble family. It was she, the pretty young woman, who was liked by the top-class people in Britain. Their wedding was beautiful, with royals, nobles, and news reporters, all there to see it. But the story was already complex behind the smooth surface. There were rumors about Camilla's feelings for Prince Charles long before they said their vows. A strong bond had been formed between them that was hard to break. People outside of their relationship knew that something was always wrong with Camilla and Andrew, even though they seemed like a good couple to hang out with. It looked like her heart was never really in the marriage, and even though she was trying to figure out how to be Andrew's wife, her love for Charles stayed strong and would last for decades. In the first few years of their marriage, they threw expensive parties, went to high-class events, and put on public shows of unity. But in private, the space between them grew. Because Andrew was in the military, he was often away for long periods of time, leaving Camilla to handle everything by herself. Over time, the gap between them emotionally and physically grew bigger. Thoughts were going around about Andrew as well as Camilla and Charles. One of the most shocking claims was that Andrew was friends with Princess Anne. It was a surprise. That made people look twice and sent shockwaves through the royal walls. Camilla felt that her marriage was in trouble for more than one reason. The name of her husband was also often linked to other women. Their relationship started to fall apart from the inside out. Still, they kept up appearances. They smiled for the cameras, ate at fancy restaurants, and stayed in their place in Britain's upper class year after year. Behind closed doors, though, they were more like strangers living together than life partners. Their personal bond weakened, but what other people thought of them kept them together. Even though it was often easy to miss, Camilla and Charles had a strong bond that could not be denied. What began as a close friendship turned into love that wouldn't go away, even after both of them started dating other people. People found out about the love triangle, which was a tough situation for Camilla to handle. It wasn't only about love. The story was about who you are, dedication, and how hard it is to live two lives at once. The cracks in their marriage got bigger over time. Andrew and Camilla were not fighting to keep what they had. They were just putting up with it. People used to think that the marriage was perfect, but it was falling apart little by little, and in the end, not even the best act could keep up the illusion. That turn, it turned out, caused a web of emotional distance, quiet betrayals, and building pressure that neither Camilla nor Andrew could handle for long. The pressure in Andrew and Camilla's marriage. The public believed they were married in a proper, aristocratic way, but those closest to the couple knew something wasn't right. The kindness that had been there in their early years had turned into something more formal, even useful. That was partly because Andrew was away from home, a lot because he was in the service. Camilla was often left to take care of the house, their social duties, and, most painfully, the attention that came with being married into a group with close ties to the royal family. But being away wasn't the only thing that was hard. People often whispered Andrew's name along with the names of other women, but some whispers were louder than others. What hurt the most was the idea that he was dating Princess Anne, who was close friends with Camilla. For Camilla, the idea itself was very painful. The thought of being betrayed by someone in her own group, whether it was true or not, added a quiet sadness that she couldn't ignore. That being said, Camilla was also involved in some things. Even though both of them were married, her connection with Prince Charles stayed in the background and never really went away. They danced around the lines of what was okay and what could not be denied for years. People who paid close attention said that they could not fully let go of their tie. It was too strong to ignore and too real to be hidden forever. The cracks got bigger inside their house. Tom and Laura, their children, grew up in a place where stress in the air was always there. In public, their parents looked like they fit the part. There were smiles at events and posed family pictures, but the mood behind the scenes was very different. The Parker BS home stopped being a safe place and turned into a stage where people practiced their public looks, but never really meant them. As the 1990s got closer, the marriage was more about following the rules than being a team. It wasn't just one big event that broke them. It was how slowly their closeness broke down, how lies built on top of each other, and how their lives were too different to survive together. No matter how weak their relationship became, the end didn't come with fire or anger. It wasn't a crisis, it was a quiet agreement between both sides. It looked like the curtain had closed, but then a new story started. People would be shocked by this, and it would make everyone think about what real loyalty means. Andrew and Camilla's breakup. Following over 20 years of happy times, tense dinners, and living different emotional lives, Camilla and Andrew ended their marriage in a quiet way in 1995. There were no angry headlines or sudden comments. There won't be any angry interviews or heated court cases. By royal standards, their breakup was so calm that it was almost scary. The formal word was that both sides were happy with it, a word that is often used to hide more serious cracks. But people who had been following their journey knew that the split wasn't easy. People at the time were mostly interested in the much more public breakup between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The royal disaster took up most of the news, and Camilla and Andrew's breakup almost went overlooked in the chaos. Still, the story behind their split was just as interesting, though it was handled more quietly. There was no doubt about what was going on after years of rumors. The bond between Camilla and Charles never really stopped, even after she married Andrew. At the same time, Andrew's affairs were now widely known. Their wedding used to be a big deal with lots of ceremony and excitement, but now it was just a quiet show for tradition and look's sake. Both of them had probably stopped acting by the time the papers were signed. They no longer had the link. That used to hold them together. Instead, they were living separate lives and agreeing that what they used to have wasn't worth keeping. Perhaps because the ending wasn't exciting enough to sell, the press didn't look into it too closely. There was a quiet story of love lost, trust broken, and two people who just got too far apart to find their way back beneath the calm words and polite smiles. And maybe what was most shocking wasn't that they broke up, but how Andrew reacted to it. But what happened next would surprise everyone. The man who took a quiet step back. There wasn't a big speech in public, an angry interview, or a press war of words. Andy did something that not many people in his situation could have done. He quietly pulled away, not because he was weak, but because he wanted to be clear. As soon as the famous Camille Gate tapes were made public in 1993, they showed the world very private talks between Camilla and Prince Charles. This scandal shocked the whole country. Diana was broken up. The government stumbled when people judged it. Andrew, on the other hand, did not move. It didn't surprise me. In the end, he said, I'd known for years. That's when he explained what many people didn't get about his silence. This was not a new deception. It was just now open to everyone. While others were shocked, Andrew just decided it was over. I'm not mad. I'm just done. Andrew was okay with the fact he'd known for years, long before the news stories and tapes came out. Someone else owned Camilla's heart. The mental distance had grown so slowly and naturally that when it finally broke down, it didn't feel like a break. It seemed like it had to happen. No more questions, no more waiting for answers, and no more expecting Camilla to fully meet his gaze at the dinner table. When people talked about Charles informally, he no longer felt scared. No longer did he fight for something he knew was never really his. But Andrew's story was quietly powerful because of how he dealt with that realization. No one was angry or upset. There was just a man who had played the part that was expected of him in the past. He was a husband, a father, a military officer, and a friend in public. He now decided to leave the emotional stage without praise or anger. He didn't just disappear. He kept going to royal family events, but he was always on the edges and never seemed out of place or like he was intruding. It could have been his way of remembering the past without acting like it still made him who he was. For Andrew, it was just acceptance. Some people called it grace, others called it honor. He knew that his part in Camilla's life wasn't to be her big love, but rather her quiet part, the one that made the rest of the story possible. In that way, he became one of the most unusual characters in the royal drama, the one who let go without making a sound. Now that their past was gently tucked away, we went back to that royal meeting knowing the history that was hidden behind their calm smiles. The air in the Guildhall was thick with class and anticipation as soon as the room went quiet. Crystal glasses sparkled in the light from the chandelier, and the low hum of talk mixed with the soft strains of the string quartet. It was supposed to be a party and a beautiful honor for Queen Camilla. But after just one speech, the room became very cold. Andrew Parker B.S., who was standing with a glass in his hand, looked like the picture of poised control. He had smiled nicely all through the early evening, giving people nearby formal nods and short hellos. Many people were surprised to see him sitting so close to Camilla after decades of being far away. No one was ready for what came next, though he stood up on his own and raised his glass as the room slowly became quiet in anticipation. We have come together tonight to honor Queen Camilla. He began slowly, and his voice had the clear beat of an old soldier. A woman was praised for her strength. Just a few steps away, Camilla smiled weakly and tightly when he said, resilience. The smile quickly disappeared when he stopped and added, resilience. But how much does it cost? Muffled sounds could be heard in the crowd. Forks stopped, moving in the air. Camilla's back tensed up, and she fixed her eyes on Andrew as if she were quietly telling him to stop. He didn't, though. He went on to say, for years, I stayed quiet and watched the truth be rewritten as the woman I once called my wife rose through scandal and scrutiny. He wasn't yelling. His voice wasn't angry. It was cold and clear. It was like a sharp edge, was carefully aimed at every word. Camilla moved around in a way that made her feel bad, and her fingers got tighter around the base of her wineglass. They called me the careless husband and the one who ran off. That being said, they forgot. The silences, the stares across the dinner table, and the absences that were excused but never believed. It was forgotten that treachery can look like many things. Several people were now sitting there with wide eyes and looking at each other, not sure if they should say anything or just stay put. However, I still agreed to it because I wanted to keep the peace, protect the children, and look good. Camilla spoke in a tense whisper to the person helping her. Even though her eyes were shining, she kept a calm face. "Let's not act like I was the only one with secrets," Andrew said, his voice lowering. "Some roads to the throne are paved, not just with duty, but with sacrifice, and I was one of them." Gasps echoed through the room, and cameras caught Camilla's lips, moving slightly, as if to speak, but she didn't. It was dead quiet in the hall. Andrew spoke the last line while his glass shook slightly in his hand. "Tonight, we raise a toast to your journey, but let's not forget those you walked over to get here." He then carefully put the glass back on the table. The soft clink it made was louder than the cheers that came before. Camilla, who looked scared, leaned in again toward her helper, who quickly stood up and quietly helped her leave the table. As she walked out of the hall, she put her hand on her cheek to hide her face from the cameras. No one knew where to look when the big door shut behind her. People looked back and forth between Andrew, who had quietly sat down again, and the empty chair that Camilla had left behind. It was planned to be an award night. It turned into a memory that everyone would always remember. Why now? Why? And what could be happening? In the hours and days following the shocking dinner, everyone who saw or heard about Andrew Parker, B.S.'s public attack on Queen Camilla had one question on their minds. Why now? Andrew had always carried himself with a strong sense of honor, never attacking Camilla or the royal family in public. Many people thought he was the epitome of discretion, because he went to royal events quietly when asked, and smiled nicely for the cameras. He even congratulated Camilla when she finally married Charles and became queen. But it was clear that night that something broke. Palace sources say that the sparks for that outburst may have been planted only a few weeks before. Sources close to Andrew said that he felt purposely ignored at another royal event, one celebrating King Charles's birthday. He was supposedly seated at a corner table far away while Camilla savored the attention. He felt not seen. A friend said he felt like she had missed him in the story of her life. It got worse that night. Some people say it wasn't just one evening. It took decades of being embarrassed to finally come out in one terrible speech. Andrew was always known as the cuckold and the prester man everyone pied or made fun of. That's a heavy burden to carry, especially when the person who did it is praised on the world stage, said one royal biographer. But the most interesting theory might come from how the press has talked about him in recent years. Tabloid stories have repeatedly made him seem like an unknown person who is just a footnote in Camilla's story. For example, just a few months before the gala, an article called him the man who lost everything, but still claps politely from the sidelines. Friends say that the news made him feel bad, and he vowed to himself that he wouldn't die with those words hanging over him. One royal watcher said that this man had been pushed to his limit. For decades, he had to smile and swallow her pride, while Camilla changed history to favor her. Men have to decide when enough is enough. But some people warned that Andrew's actions might not have been an intentional act of revenge at all, but rather a moment of pure weakness. After all, he had been seen steadily sipping from his wine glass all night, and his normally stiff demeanor was becoming less rigid as the night went on. His words were too sharp and well-rehearsed to be mistaken for drunken rambling, even by those who think he was angry. Was it justice, revenge, or just a tragic slip of the mask? That night, Andrew Parker B.S. destroyed Queen Camilla live, but it's still unclear whether he won anything or just burned the last bridge between them, leaving everyone to wonder who really won. Keep watching to find out what happened next. The grand hall was stunned into silence as Queen Camilla walked through the gilded doors. Guests were unsure whether to applaud, comfort, or just look away. Camilla was reportedly shaking as her helpers rushed her into a private side room. Cameras caught her wiping her cheeks with a tissue, her mascara smudged, and her face full of shock. She looked like a queen who had lost her cool. Andrew Parker, B.S., on the other hand, stayed at the table and looked remarkably calm. If he felt bad about what he did, he didn't show it. Some said he was defiant, almost triumphant, as he slowly drank the rest of his wine, while murmurs filled the room. Others nearby said there was a split second right after Camilla left, when his eyes lowered and his shoulders sank, as if he realized the full weight of what he'd done. As soon as this was noticed, palace staff acted quickly. Some rushed to help Camilla, while others quietly approached Andrew and told him to leave quietly, to avoid more shame. But when they got outside, the damage was already done. Within minutes, videos of Camilla's tearful exit and Andrew's harsh comments were shared on social media, and tabloids and major networks alike ran stories like Andrew Parker, BS shatters, Queen Camilla live, Royal Gala turns into scene of heartbreak, and a queen in tears has passed, returns to haunt her. As early as the next morning, both Buckingham Palace and Clarence House put out carefully worded statements. Buckingham Palace called the incident a regrettable personal matter, while Clarence House stressed that Queen Camilla would continue to do her job with grace and dignity. Neither statement specifically mentioned Andrew by name, but it was clear what they were saying. Even so, the images of that night, Camilla wiping away tears and Andrew's steely gaze, couldn't not be erased. The event that was supposed to honor Queen Camilla's reign instead left a permanent mark on her legacy and proved beyond any doubt that old wounds can still hurt, live on, and be seen by everyone. What did you think about Andrew's outburst? Was it fair, mean, or sad? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more shocking royal drama.